Okay. So, yes, as I just mentioned, this is the first of a series of four. And as you know, this is called Principles and Pathways for Sustainable Lifestyles. These are all free. However, at the end, I also talk about the online course that I have put up together, which is a way that I also give of what I love to do. This is why I do it. And this is part of my passion to share these ways of living in a more regenerative way, more sustainable way, and obviously it's a healthier way. And yeah, so towards the end of the course, I will be giving the opportunity for some people to jump in on this sprouting and course, which is then it's divided in two. The first part is about sprouting. The second part is optional for those who want it, but it's about growing then microgreens, which is something that I have been doing for a number of years and supplying a lot of restaurants also with the produce. And then when COVID happened and a lot of restaurants closed, I was supporting a lot of local people while I was in Malta. But now, since about 5.5 to 6 months, I have been here in Portugal working on this beautiful project, the Z Barn. And we are on the coast of Ericeira. I had originally got this land about 2 years ago, and the idea was to start co-creating a community over here. And in the meantime, then obviously with COVID, things haven't been flowing so easily with having lots of people, but in summer we did have quite a few. And I'm still working here, creating a space for people to come to learn. And we're still pointing ahead towards March, April, when it's the first time that we will be allowing people to come through and stay. And we have also a series of experiences and events that will be open. um, I'm going to mute you, Gail. Sorry. um, yeah, so towards the beginning of the summer season is when we will be hosting our first retreats, events, and courses. And hopefully we'll be seeing some of you physically here to share the space and gain from the experiences that we're putting in here as a, hello Giada, as a living ecosystem that is also productive with the design principles of permaculture, which is, as I will show you, something that I've been so passionate about for so many years now, over 20 years that I've been working with permaculture and also on various parts of the world. But for a long time, I was working with a lot of people in Malta and giving courses over there. Okay, so yeah, as I said, this is the first one of these four webinars. Whoever wants to join on the others is also obviously free to join. They're not one following the other, but will go deeper and deeper as we go along. But anyone can join anytime. And so for the sake of respecting those that will be coming on board, I'm not going to jump in deep into the permaculture principles and the design processes, because from feedback of many years before, sometimes it can be overwhelming for some people. So today it's just the basic principles that I'm sure are still good enough towards pointing us for a sustainable lifestyle. And then as we go along, you can decide if you want to like engage more, go deeper, and you see where your journey is going to take you. So yes, then we have the other one is going to be about connecting with nature. So a lot of ways how we can connect with nature and use nature for our growth and also as part of our daily meditation. And then we have the adventure of permaculture, which is going to be a bit of a journey about where it took me along the years and what I did and how I devised systems through permaculture understandings. And the last one of the four is going to be about symbiosis, about designing a regenerative lifestyle. So we're still using permaculture principles and lessons and insights and experiences, and you can take them and you can plug them into your lifestyle, however that is going to be. Okay, so yes, I'm super excited to have you all guys here. I think there's about 20 of you at the moment, and I do take this very seriously. And I appreciate and respect you taking the time out of your daily lives and coming here. That means a lot to me, because it obviously means that, you know, you value what I have to share so much that you are here engaging. And also because of that, I put in quite a bit of energy and time and effort into delivering good sustenance into these webinars, so that you can feel a good vibrance of energy afterwards. And for this, thank you very much. I am humbled. And again, just for those who joined a little late, towards the end, I will be talking about the superfoods and growing superfoods anywhere course that you guys can join in. And I put a special price for this window, 24 hours within this time until 24 hours, then to join in. And if not, that's fine. You know, this is a way how also I manage to support what I do. But if that's not something that you would like to embark on, that's completely fine. You can still join on other webinars. You can support by however you want, paying it forward to someone else. You can also, if you would like to support us at the Z-Barn, you also have an option to do that. And I'm also opening up through the Z-Barn website a monthly subscription, where we will be offering a group call to support each other through these times. So there will be like 2 group calls a month. And this, for those of you who would be interested, please, afterwards, you can email me or message me, whatever, reach out. And this is going to be a meeting place for people who are like-minded, like us, to come together and share whatever that is. And hopefully when the time is right to connect, if you guys want to come here and experience this kind of lifestyle, you can also do so. Okay, so I'm going to move on and share my screen with you guys into the presentation. And here we are. So, principles and pathways for sustainable living. The way I see it is that when I embarked on or came across permaculture, one of the most enlightening things that I came across was the principles of permaculture. And although I'm not going to cover those today, I still like the word a lot, because these principles are kind of pointers, you know, they are not regulations. You don't have to kind of think of them as something rigid, but they are pointers and pathways that can help us to live in a more sustainable lifestyle. So basically, I'm just introducing myself here. And for those who don't know me, I am an ecological designer, meaning that I design ecosystems that are productive, ecological farms, places for communities, places also for if there are schools that have been wanting to have a productive educational garden, as well as other meaningful projects that get people more in touch with nature on various levels. And yes, 18 years ago, I will tell you a bit more about it as we go along, but I started a very ambitious project on the island of Malta, and we're going to see a little video about that. And that kind of, over the years, gave me a lot of direct experience from one of the harshest climates I've ever lived in. And although it was harsh and challenging, it was still really, really beautiful, because it's still a really beautiful area. And when I say harsh, it's because the elements were hard. They weren't easy. It was hot in summer, dry, windy, and the sea was close, so there was also salty winds. But following the permaculture understanding and design, I also understood how any landscape can be transformed and become an oasis. Okay, so the first principle that I chose to share with you guys is the approach to a zero or a minimal waste approach in our life. And we all go to shops, you know, and buy stuff. And one of the things which always gets to me is the packaging, that we find most stuff that we see on shelves in supermarkets, or even in sometimes small shops that where they open up a plastic bag and they want to put stuff in it, like to give you something. And this is a simple thing, that we can all remember as our daily practice, is to be prepared and think a bit forward, when we are about to do something or purchase something, because whatever we share, even with a shop owner, if we say to them, listen, I've got my own bag, thank you, I don't want that plastic bag, there's already a lot of plastic. Even if, after sometimes they still do the same thing, but after some time they start to get to know you, and maybe, it still starts to spark a conversation even between that person and the other clients, for instance, for example. And I like to, have a number of things, especially in my car. I always like to have my bag with other, like a cardboard box or whatever, and try and minimize as much as possible packaging. So even if there is stuff that's packaged, usually, especially if it's vegetables, I don't buy it. And if there are others, I try and choose the ones which have the least packaging if I am stuck, or if I can, then I would pass on another shop and find something that doesn't have any packaging whatsoever. And this is kind of one of the first things that I look for. Obviously, I'm not going to say that it's so important that we reuse as much as possible, and also then separate our waste in order to be recycled. And there's also other things, like I see a lot of people, for example, I had someone here bringing me the coffee refuse from a shop. And I got into conversation with this person because there was some plastic stirrers in the coffee. I was using the coffee to mix it for some plants, because you can use it as a deterrent for some pests, or you can just compost it. But I got into a conversation about this plastic, and she said the customers were complaining when we used wood, because I suggested for them to use something like bamboo or wood, and she said the customers were complaining because it changes the taste of the coffee. And I said, like, you really need to look for some other customers with this business. You really need to find people that are going to appreciate the coffee that, first of all, doesn't come in the plastic cups and doesn't use any plastic stirrers. So there was like a little hint for me to also help her, she's going to adopt her parents' kind of business, to start marketing her coffee and targeting her coffee differently. So these are all like simple ways, but the more we can obviously reuse and minimize on waste is the least thing that we can do as consumers. Oops, there we go. The second one is to use reclaimed and natural resources wherever we can. And obviously we are not all doing the same thing, but this is an example from my first hand on my farm, where around the farm there's a lot of what is called caniash in Latin. It's a cousin of bamboo. It's a reed in English. And one of the great things that I found about, for example, this reed is that, one, it's annual. It's an annual renewable resource. So it grows every year. If it's cut or completely down from the bottom, which is in English we say coppicing, if you coppice it completely, it grows to its full growth again within 1 year. And in so doing, for instance, these practices help nature a lot. It's a way of working in symbiosis with nature, because if we use this material in the right way, we can use it for various things. Apart from building, we can actually create soil with it. We can create char, which I'm not going to go in detail today because they're topics for another webinar. But the stimulation of the regrowth of this biomass, of this plant, is actually also helping clean the air, because once it's growing, it sequesters more carbon dioxide and it captures more carbon. And so the more we look around us and we find examples of how we could use reclaimed or natural resources, the better we are, living a sustainable lifestyle, because these are all pointers towards how we can create a better environment around us. And also we can tell the story. You know, we can share whatever it is that, like me, for example, I'm talking to you about this. This was a windbreaker that I've put on for a number of trees that I've planted. And because in summer we have a northerly wind that is quite strong, I wanted to create a windbreaker. I could have purchased a plastic net, for instance, but that goes completely against my principles. And so it was a lot more hard work to do this, but in the end, it's a lot more beautiful, and it's also a lot more meaningful. Yeah, so obviously we cannot always do that, but the more we look at alternatives and do a little bit of research, you know, because it always lends to what we're doing. If we do a little research and we find that there is an alternative resource that we can use, then so be it. And then here I have the examples of like also using cardboard for various things. We can also reuse cardboard to also create compost, for instance. Wood is also a natural resource, and if you know where the wood is coming from, it's even greater. And if not, and if you are using wood, I suggest to people always like go and plant a tree, you know, somewhere. Maybe just like put it somewhere where if you know how to plant well, it's going to then survive well. If you don't, you can reach out, I can help you out with it. And there are also ways on how to give the tree a good head start so that even if there isn't any irrigation system afterwards, it will still survive. Then there's an example of using burlap sacks, which are also part of a natural material. Okay, glass is also a natural, it's not a renewable resource, but it's a natural material, and it's made out of, a source which is very abundant in nature. And the good thing about glasses can be reused over and over and over again. And so like sometimes when I buy something and it's in a glass jar, I love to collect these glass jars and I put them aside. And then sometimes if I have a lot of basil, for example, in summer, or a lot of pea shoots, when I'm growing a lot of pea shoots, I think about how to reuse that material. Sometimes I'm making pesto with it and then I could pack it and freeze it, whatever. And so these things are kind of, if you have the right space or if you can make that space, it's fantastic to include it in your space. Jerrycans, for example, also, you know, if you have the ability to collect some rainwater, you know, maybe you're not on a huge farm or a piece of land like I am here, but you have a small space and you can still collect some rainwater, you can still use a jerrycan, you can collect some water, you can reuse that water for plants when they need it, for example. And I also included vinegar here because vinegar can also be used as a natural disinfectant in our houses. Vinegar can be used to wash, disinfect stuff. We can also put it on your skin, on your hair. And when the water goes directly into the soil, for example, or plants, then it does the soil biota doesn't need to deal with any chemicals that might be in soap, for instance. But it is slightly acidic and plants really love that. So when the water has a slight acidity to it, and it's going mostly, because some soils are acidic already, but most soils in the world today are alkaline. And so most of the time this fits well. The next one is adopting a plant-based lifestyle. And for not everybody, you know, eats or is a vegetarian or vegan like myself. However, still adopting a better or more inclined plant-based lifestyle is a more sustainable lifestyle, because plants actually have a lot of nutrients directly available to us, and we can assimilate most of those nutrients much easier than if we had to be consuming the meat, for example, to obtain those nutrients. The good thing about having a plant-based lifestyle is that also we need a lot less space to cultivate, or if a farmer had to be cultivating the field to grow a crop, if we had to work out the equation of how much land is needed in order to supply, for example, 50 people, it's, for example, 100 meters. I'm just putting the figures to give you a perspective. If we had to be eating meat to support 100 people, then we need many thousands of meters, and a lot more chemicals, a lot of also damage to the ground, also mining goes into it. And the reason being is that today, a lot of the conventional fertilizers that go into cultivating food, especially fodder for animals, they come from fertilizers that have their bases that are mined from the ground. And so they are salt based. You have mostly these are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Then there's also a number of others, but these are the main three that are found as in big quantities in order to really boost plants to grow fast, okay? And so these are inorganic, they are not helping the plants to obtain nutrients organically. And so also when these are used, the plant boosts itself really quickly up, but it doesn't grow in its own slow time, that it also absorbs the micronutrients from the subsoils and so on, right? And in the conventional agriculture, we find this a lot. So a lot of the food that we get from conventional agriculture also is not fully in terms of its nutrients that it used to have 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago. However, it's still like, even if you cannot get organic foods in your area, it is still more sustainable to be eating plant-based diets rather than like if you had to be eating meat. Plus also that then there is the spaces that dairy farms use, and a lot of inconvenient and unhappy situations where animals are being put in order to be cultivated for the market. Okay, so yes, I think the last point I wanted to say is also that a lot of the inorganic materials that are used, a lot of the fertilizers, a lot of also the pesticides that are used in conventional agriculture, they destroy the biota of the soil, the living organisms in the soil that are responsible for a lot of the biodiversity that the earth needs in order to be healthy, to stay sane. And so the more we steer towards organic cultivation, the more we support people or farmers that are doing their best to make a livelihood out of cultivating food organically and giving you something with more sustenance, the more of a sustainable way you are approaching yourself and your health, as well as the health of the planet. And there are numerous ways of how to have a healthy plant-based diet with a lot of variety as well. We get to share a bit more of that also, because one of the things that I have in part of this course is also a recipe book. Yeah, eating local, so supporting local businesses, I've just mentioned that now is also going to reduce transportation. And now more than ever, we get to understand, especially if we've seen a bit of a shortage or we've all been hit by lockdowns, right? Because of this COVID story that's happening around us. And now this kind of thing, we can see it also as positively rather than just negatively, because it's also giving us an urgency to understand the importance of food growing around us, to understand the importance that we gain food sovereignty and see the people, if we are not those people ourselves, but see the people that are supporting that growth or helping with this with the cultivation of the food, or even by serving that food locally. And it's given also others, people, opportunity to actually engage with their local farmers. And most importantly also, apart from all this, and this is part of the reason why I'm here talking to you guys, is to help you gain food sovereignty and see how easy it is to grow a percentage of highly nutritious food, that's why it's called superfood, in your own home. Okay, food that can be cultivated easily within days, okay, with very little inputs, energetic input and time. I'm going to be sharing more of this. So building a relationship with your food through sprouting, okay, and sprouting again is one of the most highly nutritious food we can find on this planet. The next stage is microgreens, which I will also explain a bit why they're different. Also, building a relationship with our food can be in the form of preserving food. So there are times, for example, when there's an abundance of a certain crop. For instance, at the end of summer, there could be like an abundance of pumpkins, you know, or squashes, whatever. And finding a way how we can preserve some of that food, you know, it's something which we've learned from our ancestors. This is what our ancestors used to do, you know. So there would be a time when there's an abundance, and then they know that winter is coming, and winter is the shortage time, okay, when food grows, okay, because we are limited with what we can grow in winter, unless we have greenhouses or a situation where we can cultivate that kind of food uh, under a microclimate. And so we need to think ahead in order to make sure, like our ancestors used to do, and have a number of food that's stored there to help us during winter. Brewing is also one of the important things that we can get into in order to like bridge this relationship with food. And a lot of people I know, they do various kinds, like grow kombucha, for example, or other forms of fermented food, which is the next one over here. And also the fermenting food is really great for our biota and our guts, because the healthy gut has a lot of bacteria that are very similar, if not the same, to those that are in fermented food. So the more we help our guts gain more populated of the bacteria inside, the more we are assimilating the food better, okay? And then obviously your body gets more energy, and if you get more energy, you're feeling more lively. So building a relationship with our food is an amazing step also towards a sustainable lifestyle. The next principle is composting. And for me, composting is a beautiful art. I know that I came across a lot of people who have come across challenges with composting, and I've helped a lot out. But I'm just going to say that it's actually not that hard to compost food. Even if you are living in a contained space, it is relatively easy with the right environment, with the right conditions, and with just a little bit of attention. But to break it simply, okay, you have a composition of nitrogen, and you have a composition of carbon and liquid water, or the juice that comes out of the greens, okay? So you can think about it this way. The greens are the ones that are going to break down, okay? The browns is the carbon that is going to absorb. So the important thing when you think about composting is to have more or less an equal ratio, okay? It can go between 60 to 40, okay, difference percentage, but ideally you will have in that ratio, you will have that ratio of greens and browns. So if you have a lot of vegetable scraps, for example, then you need to think that you need more or less the same amount of what we call browns, which could be in the form of paper, cardboard, wooden chips, leaves from the trees, as long as they are dry, okay, as in brown. So you have the carbon and the nitrogen mix more or less in ratio. Then there's various ways of composting, and I'm going to cover this again when we talk about the permaculture in the next webinar, but I'm going to go a bit more into detail. But just to give you a hint, that it is really not that difficult, and if you want to go out and start doing some research, it's something that will help the environment a lot, because rather than the waste going into landfill to create gases that gases that are not good for the atmosphere, they can go into helping the soil. And even if you don't have a garden yourself, once you have compost, you can give it to a tree. Go find a tree somewhere, or go find a gardener and see if he or she would like it, for example. And I'm sure that if they're like me, someone comes and gives me compost for free, they're going to say yes. Okay. Another principle that I really like to include is foraging. foraging is an amazing, amazing way to connect with the wilderness, because with foraging, you can go out and look with different eyes around you to see what are the wild plants or herbs that there are growing around you that are edible. Sometimes I would suggest, if you know very little, to either go with someone else who already knows a little bit about this, or you can also look into it by researching about what grows in your area that is good. And you can, if you're still unsure, check about them, about the plants that you find. For example, at different times of the year, there is different plants that grow. For example, in Malta, one of the really, a lot of people see it as a pest, is fennel, wild fennel. And wild fennel is a great plant that has so many benefits, for example, to the human body. And from the seed to when it's even in alkaline form to when it's all in the pollen form, sorry, before it starts to seed, it's very alkaline, which is great for the body. You can make tea. It helps the digestive system. It helps also if you have heartburn, for example, to calm the body down, and alkalinizes the body, and so that takes off the acidity, and obviously then takes the pain off, for instance. And this is a wild plant that grows everywhere. This is just one. But there are many. So even on a small island where I come from, there is many plants that can be foraged. Always, my advice is to always respect the plants when you go out there and forage. Do not take more than than nature can provide us happily with, and always leave some behind. Like if there is only one plant, don't go and cut it. Just give it time to self-seed or whatever. But there are usually an abundance of plants there that will be yielding us some form of medicine or food. And a great aspect about these plants is because most of these plants have these phytochemicals in them that they haven't been tampered with. Like, for example, if you see lettuce, we've been growing lettuce for many years over and over again. I'm just giving one example here with lettuce. And some of the lettuce is not natural anymore. Some of it has been hybridized. And by hybridized, I mean that it's been cultivated outside the natural way, so cultivated within greenhouses, just to extrapolate seed from it, so that the manufacturers or the growers of this type of lettuce, they get just that kind of seed to sell for the next year for some reason or other. Now, in so doing, they manage to get a nice cultivar, but sometimes they are losing up on what would naturally combine if bees had to be pollinating naturally from one plant to another, what the genetics of the next plant would have. And so a lot of the wild plants, when we forage, they have this natural response to them. So they help us also with our own stimuli for our immune system. Okay. We're going to talk now a little bit about various ways of gardening. I'm just going to present you with some innovative ways to garden, because it's definitely one of the biggest things that I believe helps us towards leading a more of a sustainable lifestyle. And the first one I started with over here is this one, which is called bag gardening. And it's interesting because even if you are living in a city, or there's a car park, or there's a space that doesn't have soil, the soil that can be brought in within a bag, for example, these are bags that have these slits on the side. And all that is being done is that these seedlings are inserted into these little slits, and the bags are watered from the top, and then the plants are growing everywhere from where the slits are to the top, for instance. And this is a nice innovative way of how you can still manage to cultivate even if it's on a rooftop, for example. By the way, there's some corn growing in here, so there's quite a variety. There's some nasturtiums with wild flowers, and there's also types of lettuces in there and some chard. So you can still be quite creative, even if it's just a bag. The next one over here is wall gardening. So even up against the walls, we can be gardening in various ways, and you can be quite elaborate in this also. But this is actually a productive farm that utilizes also the walls with these concrete bricks that are, most of them are at an angle of about 45 degrees to hold the moisture transferring better. And it's still very productive, especially for leafy greens. You can also grow certain types of vegetables also, but then you will have to aid them with some types of holding structures to keep their fruit and the stem up, but they are also very productive. The other type of gardening here is similar to the bag, but this time we have boxes, okay, is the container gardening. And again, these are great because they are super productive. You can even use, in Malta, for instance, I used a lot of IBC tanks, which are the square tanks which have a steel grid around them. And even in just these spaces, I designed wicking beds, which are, I'm not going to go into the topic today, but in a small space, you can have quite a good production of a variety of food. And the container gardens are easy because you can even walk around them. You don't have to do much weeding, just as in like if they had to be in the ground in a full garden, for instance. And they are even accessible to children, for example, where kids are easy to just walk around them and see what's happening in there, without having to trample or go over anything, any other plants in there. And so container gardening is definitely one of the things that I like to advocate a lot, especially for the urban designs. Another type of gardening that we talk a lot as well in permaculture is forest gardening. So forest gardening can take different forms. We go also in types of agroforestry systems where we can also use some type of machinery like tractors. And when we are doing this on a big scale, the good thing about it is that it is not your typical bare open field. There is still a lot of trees involved and herbaceous plants, and we mimic the system of a forest. So when we had to devise a forest and we look at the diversity of the structure of plants and trees that live together in harmony, we can dissect that into a very simple system where, for example, we see number one, it's the crown trees. So the trees that grow the highest and that they develop a crown, okay, in the forest. Then we have the number two, which is the understory type trees, which grow just about as high, a little bit less, and they fill up that space. They kind of still need the number ones to give them that microclimate. Then we have the number threes, which are again come slightly lower than the number twos, and those are usually the bushes that grow in forms of under again the second layer. And then we can go again to the number four, which are the herbs, and the number five, which are the creepers, and then we can even go down to number six, that are the root crops. And so we can mimic that system, and we can provide productive gardens that work just like that. Just like in nature, we have a biodiverse forest that maximizes over that space. We can do the same when we grow food, for instance. And there are various advocates for this type of food design system. A number of people already around the world have been very successful with designing, and I'm talking about quite high production systems in here, not just to feed a family or two. The last one over here is guerrilla gardening. sorry, it's the one before last. So guerrilla gardening is something that I believe got started in the States, and where people just go out and they find a patch in their town and they start to cultivate something. In this one in particular, there's just flowers, but there's a big difference, as I'm sure you can see.
Battery 100%.
And these flowers in there already make a big difference, you know. So even I suggest for people to just do it for fun, you know. You
Connected
don't even
to
need to
Cookiezine's iPhone.
you don't even need to sorry, that was my speaker over there talking to me. Get anything back if you do it, and you just maybe even leave a note, you know, on it, just something to say that this food, this is being looked after by someone, you know, and it's there to be shared, to have someone else interact with it, you know. It can even start to spark something in your place where you live. Yeah, and this, in some places, this has taken quite big, and there's a lot of big communities. Maybe you can even search it if there is anyone who's a guerrilla gardener in your area. And there's various ways. Sometimes even finding an empty plot of land. You don't even need to own land. If you find an empty plot of land, sometimes you can sometimes be able to grow some food. A friend of mine actually was living in a flat in Malta, and in the land next door to where he was living, there was a yard, and there was a boat, an old wooden boat that someone had left there. And after he did the permaculture design course with me, he went and turned that boat into a garden and started growing quite a number of food in this wooden boat, which was quite surreal. And the last one here is about sprouts and microgreens, which we're going to talk in a bit as well. Another principle here that I'm wanting to share is about learning from ancestral wisdom. There is so much ancestral wisdom that we unfortunately have lost. Um, Luckily, it's not completely lost, but a lot of us today do not come in contact with elders that pass us on this direct knowledge. And we do not live in tribes. We live in a society that is quite fast paced, and it's skipping a lot of this ancestral knowledge and wisdom. And so this one I came across this morning, for example, and I just quickly put the picture in here to share it with you. But this is a type of Japanese pollarding. Pollarding means the the way that some trees are cut in order to grow again. That is, before we mentioned the word coppice, yeah, when I talked about the bamboo. Now, coppicing is those type of plants that can be cut from the bottom where they touch the soil completely and they regrow again, okay? So bamboo, willow, for example, and there are others, they can be harvested through this process called coppicing. Then there are other trees that the way to utilize them is through this process called pollarding. And pollarding, you don't cut the plant or the tree from the bottom, but they are cut from a certain height, just like this one over here. And what the plant does, then it shoots up again after some years. This is not done annually, by the way. This is done every 3, 4, 5, 6 years. But then these plants shoot again new shoots. And in this one, this is a type of conifer that the Japanese choose, and they have a certain way how to do it, where then they get straight wood, for example, without any knots, which is ideal when you are using wood for carpentry, for example. And so there's ways how we can actually create a symbiotic relationship with plants. We can look after plants, and they are happy to give us also out of their produce. And if we look after them in this way, for example, there doesn't need to be a destruction. There doesn't need to be a complete tree that's cut dead, for instance. You know, this is a beautiful way. And it's a great example of how we can learn from these ancestral wisdoms, you know, in order to regain more of these practices in our lives. And we can also create businesses that are relying on these forms of cultivation and symbiotic relationship with nature. Integrating low impact systems. So again, one of the things that I always do myself is I make a list before I go somewhere. I don't like to just go somewhere with the car just for one thing, for example. So I usually like write a list, and when that list hits a certain number or urgency, then I go out and I kind of try and put as many things together as possible. So unless, even if I'm going surfing, usually I like to do something else on the way. So I haven't just gone out for one thing, for instance. Um, but again, like using our bodies more. For instance, today I went out and had a real nice walk. I walked out 3 kilometers from here into this valley. And again, it's a low impact system to just go somewhere. Bicycles are a great way because, you get there faster faster than walking, I mean. And you can still carry a certain amount of material with you. So over here, I still don't have a bicycle, but I'm looking forward to when I have one very soon. And again, like having these plans and little ideas that remind us, if we're going to do the shopping, what we're going to take out with us, and ways that we can minimize the impact as well as enjoy ourselves more and stay more healthy. The last one, or the one before last, I want to talk about is by creating or joining a currency. And what do I mean by this? I don't mean that you can go and stamp or create money, even though that's what some people have been doing for a number of years, and now we have to go to work for it. But creating a currency, and I love this picture here. I didn't do it, I just found it on the internet today. It says be creative, and it has two arrows going different ways. That's because I liked it so much, because the alternating currency, which is what we find in our electricity, is going both ways. Okay. So a currency needs to ideally go both ways for it to be really effective long term. Because what goes out and comes back in exchange is creating this currency. So what do I mean by joining or creating a currency? It's like this webinar is creating a currency right now. It means that I came here, I put something to offer something out, to share something, and you guys came across it and you responded to it. You said, okay, I'm going to put some time aside and I'm going to go and join it. And however that's going to affect you, it's beyond my whatever I could be thinking of, but that is a way of exchange. It's a resource exchange. This is what I mean as like creating a currency. And we can still paying it forward. For example, you saw something that really struck you and reminded you about someone or something that you can share with someone else. And this is another great way of, like, I like to take notes when I see something of who I can share it with, for example, because in that way it's meaningful to me to be giving the content to those people that want that kind of content, for example. So it's a sharing of resource that's coming more meaningful in my life. Again, and this is the each one teach one. So my thing is to go out there, whatever you're passionate about, just share it. I'm sure there are people that want to learn something from you, whatever it is that you do. We all have our speciality, we all have our talents, and there are others that for me, for example, I had a lot of resistance in the previous years to teaching online and through the screen and creating online courses. And I had a number of friends who just kept on telling me, Pepe, you just can't, expect people to be coming out here in Bahri Oasis, because not everyone can do it. And there's a lot of people that, like, as soon as we do a podcast or something with you, they just want to know more. And it took me years. I must admit that I was having this resistance for quite a number of years to it. But I finally gave into it, and I just got the right feedback. That it doesn't mean that it's bad because it's a screen or I'm sharing it through a virtual world. It still ends up in someone's energy field, and if I can impact someone through this way, then I'm not going to hold back anymore. It's a way that I'm going to do it forward. So we can all help in this way and teach each other. So these are, just to share something, these are some people that have decided to write a testimonial also for my work. Over the years, there's been quite a few people that have come for my courses, some physical and some online. I'm not going to go through all of them. But what I'm saying over here is that we all have an opportunity to take control over some things in our life. Obviously, we cannot control everything. That would be, quite crazy if we did. But we have control over quite a number of things in our life, and most things is like how we react to whatever is happening around us, and how we design our lifestyle um, to what is happening around us. There's a lot that's happened around us this last year. That's granted, there's also a lot that's still happening, but we cannot control much of what's happening, but we can control of how we can still adapt our lifestyle to stay on the right track, to be positive and still be creative about how we can sort out the situations that we find ourselves in. And again, most of the time we are being impacted, especially if there's a lockdown and we are living, not in nature, or we are in somewhere where there is not much around us. But to think about how the best way we can be in order to still stay sane, to have control over, be sovereign over our food, or at least a percentage of it. So let's think ahead. And this is why I've put this program, this course, especially more than before, it's finding its importance to be shared with others. So from now on, I'm going to start talking about the online course that I'm offering also. And so if this is something that you are not looking towards, it's okay, you can still stay here. If so, then you can jump in at the back and let me know. But this, guys, I'm doing this for creating also an online presence with anyone who, like, we are all in different places, but we also come together on this platform. So we're making the best of what we have to still inspire and fulfill each other. And also, through what I talked to you about having the memberships for people that want to join in on the long term, it's a great potential to share what you do and also connect with others. Or I don't know, maybe you will also be having something that you would be wanting to put forward. And enjoying a holistic approach, so we can be sharing whatever it is that we are finding that's working really well for us in our life. And also be there and be authentic and showing up even through our vulnerability or whatever we are just being faced by. So this will be a space twice a month where you can just be finding a safe space where you can just be and share and connect with others that are like-minded in the space. This is one quote that I'm just going to leave with before I jump onto the other one, that success is a journey, guys. It's not a destination. And I keep reminding myself each time, especially when I think I haven't done enough, that success is in the process of like how I am feeling and how I'm delivering my energy in what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. It's not somewhere I'm going to reach, We've already reached that stage in being who we are. And that's all that's needed, And being through that being is how can we be more happy? How can we be more sustainable in that? And in here, I'm going to share a little bit about my story. Okay, so it's this is just a very short version of my story, because otherwise we wouldn't have enough time. But it was in after my schooling, I really rejected everything that was being presented to me. I just couldn't feel well. My intuition was really taking me elsewhere from what was I being given. I didn't want to go to university. It just didn't resonate to me at all at that time. And none of the subjects was making any sense. As in, like, okay, I loved physics, I loved maths, I like the English language because it enabled me to communicate with people who are foreign outside my island, and others. But as in like a job, as in like a career, there was nothing that was being presented through the conventional schooling that I was resonating towards. And so I had met someone who gave me the first travel guidebook to India, and when I was 17, 18, and I decided that this is what I wanted to do. He was a traveler himself, and then I just said, okay, I'm gonna ditch everything, start making some money, and I'm gonna go there. And this was for me an explosion. The first place I left my island, I went to India in 1997, when we didn't have emails, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Instagram, Facebook, we didn't have anything of this. It was just the old school way of like, you had to call your parents to tell them where you are, and you had to use a booklet, and you had to like, you know, make a reservation over a call or something like that. The plane tickets were still handwritten at the time. Anyways, and yeah, that's me in a tree house, which where I love to be. And anyway, through the journey, I found myself in Australia a few years later, and I had one big occasion in life where I had everything being stolen. And I had a lot in there because I had 2 years of work in my backpack of jewelry and the stuff that I was planning to be selling on the markets to continue on the road. And this thing happened, and in a nutshell, I ended up I didn't want to give up. I wanted to stay up on the road. So I'm thankful to being headstrong in that. And I ended up on the first permaculture course, on the first permaculture farm. And all of a sudden, when I came across the literature about permaculture, and the guy was teaching me a little bit about how it worked, I was just blown away and saying like, wow, this is so meaningful. This is the best thing that happened to me in my life. And it brought to me the understanding how all subjects could be so important if they were integrated as an education like this. And because all of a sudden now it gave meaning to why we could do things, because with the principles and the design of permaculture, we can create anything around us that is much more abundant and that's much more beautiful. And for me, that was like the journey. From then on, I just kind of kept on in this adventure of permaculture. And years later, I went back to Malta, and then I started this project over here, which is now Bahri Oasis, 18 years. This piece of land which my dad had, which is quite dry and arid, which I was telling you about. This is, if you see the mouse scrolling over this wall, there's a huge rubble dry stone wall that I had built in order to contain the land and protect it from the elements. And there's a huge forest, as we're going to, it's a Mediterranean forest, we're going to see now in a little video. And I went on this mission to put whatever I had learned in the previous year to test. And the thing is that coming from Australia, which is a subtropic and lush place, into this dry heaviness was a real challenge. Was complete different contrast of environment around. But it just proved that through this design, it can work anywhere. And still, after about 2 years of working there, I got the opportunity to go and do a permaculture course, and I went on the Isle of Man. This was the first, I remember I was working on a movie at the time, because I used to work on movies, and it was Steven Spielberg's movie called Munich. And I was so tired of the film set, I just said, okay, where's the next permaculture course? And it was on the Isle of Man. I didn't even know where it was. And then we went to the Isle of Man for this course. And I loved the island so much that I said, okay, I'm going to stay here a little longer. And so I had a friend who gave me this dome to stay in. And after some time, winter was hitting, and someone came with this truck, and they sold me this truck, and I lived in it because I started to study in Wales at a place called Centre for Alternative Technology. I think I'm seeing Jonathan Hill here, who's one of my fellow students when I was studying in Wales at this place. Wow, hello, Jonathan. It's been a long time. And while I lived in this woodland and this truck, it was the first time that I came across sprouts. And I was just like, wowed, by the idea. So there was a book at the library, there was a shop that had just opened and was selling the starter kits for sprouting. And I was just saying, wow, because it was already winter by then, and I hadn't really planned a good garden. It was still undergoing, but I was just like, wow, this is the first sprouter, or it's an image of the first sprouter that I had. And I was growing continuously sprouts within this small space. This little arrow over there, that's showing the shelves that I had for growing my food within that little space. And the thing is that I was doing it so well that I just had an abundance of it, and I was even sharing with others just from that little space that I had. This little introduction booklet that I'm showing you here is something that you can all get from me for free if you go on the pepizenglifestyle.com, but it's part of the course as well. So the good thing about sprouts and why they're called a superfood is because they are like really packed with high levels of sometimes chlorophyll, but mainly antioxidants, and obviously they have a very wide range profile, some of them, and they help the body detoxify a lot and promote obviously healthy growth. Okay, I'm not gonna go into the full science about, you know, and the many constitutions of different types of crops and sprouts that are good for what. But the good thing is that you'll find those really easily, but I also have a booklet somewhere where I kind of put into another presentation. But what I can say is that even if you just have 5 different types of crops and you are growing them at home, one, you have something that grows within days and it's going to give you a yield within days. And especially in times like this, where we really need to boost our immune systems and make sure that we have some food at home that's organic, that's fresh, and that's green, it can happen really easily with just a little input a day. Okay, and it doesn't need much space. So for holding a bit of seed, I like to have boxes of seed, but you don't need to go that much like myself. Even just a small space, it can keep you going for quite some time. And that is why it's so versatile for so many people and why I love to share more of this. Okay, so I'm going to have a little break here. I'm going to share this. It's like about 5 minutes video, which I talked to you about sharing the development of Bahria Oasis, and then why I got so passionate, rather than just teaching permaculture, but also teaching people how to cultivate superfoods in terms of sprouts at home. So if you have your speaker, it might be a bit loud.
Battery
Last time
100%.
that's what happened.
Connected
I'll see
to
if I can
Pepe's
minimize the
iPhone
volume
and
down a little bit
Pepe's MacBook Pro.
so it doesn't blast your speaker. So here we go. Greetings. My name is Pepe Gauci. I am the visionary and the designer behind the Bahri Oasis project, which is now over 18 years old. It now looks like a natural Mediterranean type food forest, but it wasn't always like that. 18 years ago, this was a desolate piece of rock. It was completely bashed up by the wind, and the elements were quite wild. You wouldn't stand relaxing over here. There was either too much sun, too much wind, or you'd be exposed to some other element. It's the labor of love, which actually put all the energy and the stamina behind it, as well as a lot of other souls that gathered and actually showed so much support in the vision that I had for it. I don't know what I did, but they were convinced to help me through it. It's difficult to say exactly, where the energy comes from. But when you feel it, and you can just go with it. Because what you feel is truth, It's something that you enjoy doing. It's your call, and when you go for it, something beautiful is going to come out of it. And I say that this project has helped so many people, has inspired so many people, has invited so many people. And that's the beauty of it, that people can come here and they take a piece of it with them. It can end up everywhere. It's ending up on your screen right now, and I don't know what you're feeling, but I'm having a good time. What I was going to share with you mostly is that, so with this design, which is permaculture design, you can create miracles. Once you adopt it in your lifestyle, once you start using this mechanism, you can create heaven on earth. Wherever you are, be it in the city, be it on a rooftop, in a beshta place, in any desolate place you could be, you can turn it into paradise. Because the vision aligned with the mechanisms of nature will turn anything into fruition. This is the mechanism of how nature works. This is the way that nature works. And nature always works towards abundance. Even after there's been chaos, you will see that nature always starts to garden. The whole intention, the whole scope behind nature's mechanism is to create abundance, it's to garden. And when we work in alignment with those mechanisms, nature creates the garden for you. Yes, you do some hard work. Yes, you need help. Yes, you need support. But through this process, you learn so much. And this is what life is about, learning in this process together. And then feeling in your heart what the feelings bring with it. What I'm sharing with you here today is a journey that has brought so much inspiration and so much good feeling to so many people. From time to time, we open the space here for people to come. And when that isn't happening, we've got other ways of connecting, giving you opportunities to learn online or ways to connect, view what we're doing, and get inspired anyway. So wherever we are in the world, we can still be connected. Please use the platforms that we've got today. Follow us, stay connected, give us some feedback, and let's be in touch. Thank you. Okay. So that was 18 years of work in Malta. And some people would say I'm crazy because now I've started all over again in Portugal on another project over here, Zeebarn. But it's fun, it's good, and it gives me also a lot of good feedback. And I'm really happy to be doing this. And so like, yeah, I'm going to just, obviously this was quite a hard work, and I understand that this is not for everybody. It's far from it, but growing superfoods in ways of sprouts and ways of growing also microgreens is definitely a lot easier than growing food maybe in an ecosystem like this. And okay, you don't have that diversity, but it's within reach for everybody. So if you do decide you want to jump on this course, the link is here, the pepizengLifestyle.com. And when you go there, you get this introduction guidebook for free. And what you get in the sprouting course is the videos that are detailing step by step how you should be like cultivating your sprouts at home. And in there's everything devised, simple steps, and obviously you also have my support if you come across something that you need to ask a question or you have some problem or other, even if it's technical. Another thing is that you get these beautiful hexagon cards in an ebook format that you will not find anywhere else. These we made ourselves, and they are taking the lessons of sprouts, but they are giving insights into life. So it's really, really beautiful cards that can be, you can cut them out, you can fold them, and you have hexagons like as a form of a card if you print them, and you can have them around. You can even like use them as a game or as a way to stimulate some thoughts about, some insight into the sustainable lifestyle. Another one is that whoever's in the group that joins will have, within 15 days, I will have again a group call, a masterclass together to see like how far you've come, what have been happening, and things that we can share again together. And then we also have an exclusive Facebook group for those whoever uses Facebook. Eventually, this is going to be through the membership site on the ZBarn. But I will be able to let everybody know as well. But for now, we have this group over there on Facebook called Grow Superfoods Anywhere Group. That's just for the people who are doing the course. And then we also have an Inspiring Nutrition leaflet. So the nutrition of some of the sprouts are already in this, and I'm also adding more as we go along, because I've got some which I've already been writing elsewhere, and they aren't presented in this beautiful nutrition leaflet yet. And there's also the positive affirmations ebook. So here I've put a number of really vibrant positive affirmations with some great pictures behind them. And, you know, some people print them and use them to color their office or whatever. And some people just, you know, have them on their screen. And sometimes they take a snapshot, like a screenshot of it and share it. And they're just like positive affirmations. That's what they are, to kind of help stimulate the day in a positive way forward. So again, to recapture everything, to give a bit of a value of everything in this course. Okay, I valued everything at 449 euros. Usually I've been also selling it through the webinar at 93 euros, but for this time, for the second lockdown, I'm putting this at 63 euros. For all of that is at 63 euros, okay? Now that's the part of the sprouting. Then if you want to take it a step, another notch, I'm going to talk in a bit for growing microgreens. So then there's another part of the course that you can also take for learning how to grow microgreens. So for the sprouts, I've kind of come across these challenges that people have relayed to me over the years, where they cannot reach organic food, that they don't have time to grow food, for example, or no space or no soil, or they don't have enough light in their apartment, or they think they need expensive equipment, that it's hard work to grow, like that they don't have experience, that all of this, so I kind of said, listen, there is nothing of this anymore. In this course we can just like do it together in a way that we can eliminate all these challenges, and to whatever level you want to go. If it's just sprouts, that's great, you've already achieved a lot. If you want to go another step further and grow microgreens, there's also an opportunity. And why I love also microgreens is because microgreens, they give these are microgreens, they're grown, they're part of my microgreens that I've been growing for a number of years. And there's a lot more diversity that you can grow as microgreens. There's also a lot more flavor, and there's also a lot more phytonutrients and fibers in them, and also more volume, obviously, because they are not just at the sprout level, but now they are a bigger plant. And obviously a lot of the professional chefs that I used to support, they just wanted my stuff because it was so vibrant and so zesty and bursting with flavor. But they, most of them didn't value it for the nutritional value that it had. So they were just using it to promote their dish rather than to promote the thing itself, right? So for me, they weren't my preferred customers, even though they loved my produce, but they weren't my preferred customers. And people that are interesting are the ones that wanted it because they value the nutrition. And now that I cannot sell it like that, they're like yourselves, they want to do it themselves at home. And so can I support you and in this way that you can do it yourself? And so, yeah, this is something now I'm looking forward to start a whole system, because I'm growing, but I'm not growing to the full potential greenhouse that I love to see, like tons of it around me, which is what we're going for in the next stage of the ZBarn, into designing an indoor food cultivation system that's really elaborate. And this you can do with the microgreens, so it's another part to the course. But if you go on that, you can choose to take this or you can choose not to take this. But if you choose to take this, then you can have this within 21 days. So from the moment you start till the moment you have a crop that looks like this, all you need is 21 days. That's amazing. Like, to have a crop within 21 days, if you follow my instructions on how to do it, guaranteed you will have that within 21 days. So a little recap. The first course about sprouting, with all its bonuses already, that is costing 63. Okay, and that's price is only going to be there for 24 hours, guys. I do this just because I love to support just you guys who turned up for the webinar. Okay, so that's only for those guys listening to this live. Otherwise, it's going to be more than that. And then for the Grow Micro Garden, for the learning how to grow microgreens, that's an additional 90 euros for that course. And there is this recipe booklet that we've put together that is just 10 euros, okay? And all of this you can find out on pepizNGlifestyle.com page, okay? So once you go through that page, you can just follow the process there, and it's easy from there on. If you get stuck though, do reach out and I'll help you in the best way I can. Yeah, so the real question is this: if you are seeing this as a cost, then obviously it's not for you, but trust me, it took me years to put all this experience, and then it took also quite a bit of energy to put it together in this. And I see it still as an investment, you know, so it's just a great investment that I've put in, and it's a little investment that I see others to take it all out and putting into and adjusting it and gaining for it for themselves. So thank you so much for coming and staying here. I can see there's still 23 of you in there. Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen if I know how. And I would like to invite anyone who wants to unmute themselves and share anything. That now is the time. I'm going to stop recording